of the PlanetK2 group, and I'm here today to chat with Aliya from JourneyHR about how to build a planet. For a long time, I've been really fascinated about how do you build an ecosystem, how do you build a culture that is strong and sustainable and is one where not just the numbers thrive, but the people thrive as well. And that's not to diminish the importance of the numbers thriving. They really matter, because without that, nothing else can happen. But I'm really interested in how you go about building a place, building a planet, building an environment where the people can thrive as well. And we've been working hard to do that in my own business for 20 years now. And I'm conscious of the work that takes, both in small founder-led businesses, but also in large corporations, sometimes across the organization, and sometimes where you have to build a microclimate or a microculture. So I'm delighted that we've got a great range of guests lined up to talk about how that works and how to make that happen. My first guest today is Aliya from JourneyHR. So Aliya, I just want to kind of say hi and introduce yourself.
Thank you,
a little bit about you. Yeah.
Sure thing. Okay, so my name's Aliya Vigor-Robertson. I am the co-founder of JourneyHR. We're an HR consultancy. We are 12 years old. I set up the business with my incredible business partner, Sue Shaw. Yeah. We've been doing this for over 10 years, and we started the business as young mothers, really, looking to explore flexibility as well as investigating and being quite curious about the potential of an offering that we believed had legs to definitely keep us busy, but also make positive change and impact in terms of the way people worked, and also gave support to other founders who needed help building strong and successful cultures. So yeah, I've had the privilege of being able to run a business, to work with incredible people in my team, people outside of my team, including customers, including suppliers, including a huge range of talent. So yeah, it's lovely to join you today, Keith. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, me too. So tell me, what in your life before JourneyHR was that? Tell me a little bit about the journey that brought you to founding your own business, because I wonder whether that was important in this in what you've created since.
It's interesting because I think the more time I've spent leading this business, the more time I've actually had to reflect on the importance of my heritage, the people around me, and the ecosystem that has brought me here, and the privilege that I've had. So before setting JourneyHR up, I had worked in HR for about 12, 13 years. And I had incredible parents as role models who were both working. I come from a family where I have 3 siblings. My parents were first, second generation immigrants, and just incredible in terms of their work mentality. So my mother was a general practitioner. She ran her own practice. My father was a human rights judge. So no pressure in terms of career and expectations. Also from a heritage perspective, both of them, my heritage is Kashmiri. So my family are from Kashmir. Which is a beautiful place if anybody should ever wish to go. Slightly messed up with a bit of war stuff going on, but we won't go into politics today because that will take us way over an hour. But ultimately, they came to this country with a real sense of wanting to make a change and wanting to do things and wanting to help people. And I feel like that has definitely driven me to find myself in a career where I have used those talents in my own way. So not going into medicine, not going into law was a real choice of mine, which was supported by them. But then going into something very different that nobody else in my family had done before was also challenge. And a challenge for me as their eldest daughter, their
Mm-hmm.
eldest child, the eldest grandchild, and a family full of doctors or accountants or lawyers in that professional space. So from my perspective, that really drove me.
Mm-hmm.
That drove me to want to create my own mold, to create my own space, to create a place where I could be successful. And I knew I was always good with people. I had 3 siblings to trial my leadership skills on, with varying degrees of success. And with that gave me confidence. It gave me an ability to step into spaces with authority with some level of experience. I appreciate being a child and growing up with siblings is slightly different to leading a business, but there are definitely some traits that are helpful. So I think there's a heritage perspective. There's also, I guess, people that influenced me as I started working. So I was very fortunate in my career to work with some incredible leaders. So I spent some time at lastminute.com, so I can reference 2 amazing founders and kind of trailblazers at the time, who I got to work with really closely. So Martha and Brent, who founded the business, in a time where the internet was just developing. So there were, I think, just about 50 people in the business when I joined. And when I left, there were about 120. And I was there for 9 months.
Wow.
So it was an intense and incredible space working with very, very intelligent people who were on the cutting edge of something that hadn't quite yet been discovered or defined. So their leadership skills were incredibly inspiring. And I had an amazing manager as well who really taught me about values, about delivery, about commercial acumen. So melting all of that together and then thinking about how I could translate that into something that would give me flexibility. So ultimately, I knew that at some point I'd want to raise a family. Again, I was very lucky to be able to do that. Working with creative people was something that was really important to me. I trialed various different businesses from corporate to more creative, and I definitely felt the creative space was my place, my people. And I met Sue along that journey. So I met Sue.
Were you
over
working
20
together?
years. Yeah. So we sat next to each other. So Sue actually was in the organisation before I joined, and had joined, I believe, just after university. So she'd done her master's, she'd done a degree, done her master's. She was sitting next to me. I turned up, I'd just come out of the city, and had some recruitment experience behind me and lastminute.com. So I joined, sat next to her, and the pair of us couldn't be more different. Apart from our northern connection, I was born in Manchester, she was raised in Bolton, so the pair of us have that. But apart from that, I think we're quite different. We have very similar values, but interestingly, over the time that we got to spend together, so we spent about 1.5 years together, we kept in touch. I was lucky enough to be invited to her wedding. She came to our wedding. We stayed in touch. And I think it was out of chance, really, that we ended up taking a punt on setting a business up together. I think it was, I don't know whether it was destiny or not, but we met feeling slightly disgruntled about, I think Sue was obviously just concerned. She was coming back out after having almost 1 year off on maternity leave. She was concerned about flexibility, about being sucked back into the corporate machine. She'd done an absolutely amazing job of escalating her career brilliantly, and quite rightly so, in her former employer. We met over fish and chips, and I said to her, look, I've started this thing. It seems to be...
So you'd already started?
Yeah.
Okay.
But the massive extroversion in me was slowly flatlining, having no one to high five or share, and the confidence was starting to wither away. So, yeah, I floated the idea with Sue. Definitely not expecting her to go, well, why the hell not? Let's give it a try. And she did, and miraculously she did. And I don't think either of us have ever looked back, because, yeah, I mean, we've set up a business. It kept us busy whilst we both had young children. So Sue had her first. I think Noah was 2.5, maybe 3. Faris was maybe 4 months old when we set JourneyHR up. Sue's daughter Jessica was a year old. She then went on to have another child. So between us both, 2 young children, rolling with setting things up, creating a standpoint and a platform in terms of what we wanted to do, our mission, our purpose, recognizing that all of a sudden there were more opportunities out there than the pair of us could handle. So, okay, so how do we create a system? How do we create a planet? What does that look like? How many people do we need? And the ball just kept on rolling. And I think it was quite a surprise for both of us where it took us in terms of just remembering sitting at my dining room table with an Excel spreadsheet writing down everybody that we knew, where they were, what opportunities we could be exploring, what conversations we could be having, to where we are now, which is a huge privilege to be still running a successful business with an incredible roster of clients that we've had the opportunity of working with and still working with, and an incredible team, a team who have, some of them are still obviously in the team, some have been in the team and left the team. It's just been an incredible journey, pardon the pun, but it has been, and yeah.
So I'm fascinated. So so when you started the business, how much of it was around that kind of the flexibility stuff that it would give you and support how you wanted to kind of live your life?
Yeah.
Which sounds like the corporate world wouldn't be able to do that in the same sort of way. How much of it was that, and how much of it was this idea? Because it sounds from what you've just said that you had quite a clear idea at the beginning of what you wanted this planet that you were creating to look like, with values and mission and a kind of culture and feel. And I'm really interested in how much of this was kind of in your mind at the beginning, and it's kind of, you know, you've brought that vision to life. And how much of it was kind of unfolded as you went along? I'm reminded of a conversation with Joe Walsh, who played guitar at the Eagles, and he was being interviewed about his career. Yeah. And he said, I get asked about this stuff. And he said, when I tell people about it now, he said, it sounds like a finely crafted novel. He said it was just a series of like random events that if you join the dots up backwards, it sounds like this beautiful thing. But actually it was just stuff that happened. And so, I'm just really interested to kind of understand how much of it was already in your head. And over the years, you've seen this thing unfold, and how much of it was, okay, well, you know, we've got some of the basics in place now. Now we could do more.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the latter. I think that the idea and the conception of the business proposition, I think I had evolved for a couple of years before I did it to gain confidence in the craft that I was able to deliver it. So I knew that there was something there, and I knew that the offering that I was thinking about had legs. I spoke to different people. I was very fortunate to have some senior people who I was able to speak to and just test things out and go, well, do you think this has legs? Do you think, I don't know of anybody else who's doing it. How would this work? And would it be a valuable proposition for business owners? So I sense checked it. I got a good sense that it had some legs. But it was the confidence then to be able to say goodbye to the employee experience, which I had really enjoyed, that safety net of the monthly paycheck and, you know, no responsibility event for anybody else or anything. As I stepped into motherhood, as I stepped into a different space in my life, my husband also runs his own business, so the pair of us were at the mercy of external factors. I think for Sue and I, when we set the business up together, it was an opportunity for us to use our brains. Both of us had spent a good proportion of our career to date thinking about that, thinking about how we engaged, how we acted out, you know, in a professional capacity. And motherhood, from my perspective, I won't speak on Sue's behalf, but motherhood, from my perspective, was a massive shock. A massive shock. From one moment I was, you know, in a job, leading a function, having really interesting conversations with people. And a few months later, I was sitting at home with a broken body and somebody to look after, and everybody else's life continued. So there was a real shock for me. And out of that shock came right, I need to do something about it. What can I do? With the support of my husband, which was incredibly fortunate, I was able to do things, and Giles was able to pick up dad duties, and he was a really active dad and continues to be an active dad. And again, I think from a flexibility perspective, if I didn't have that level of support, it would have been much harder for me to be able to do this.
What was it that, because I guess, so what you've described, it could be the case for lots of people. You chose to create your own thing.
I did.
What was it that felt important in terms of creating your own thing rather than finding your way back into a world that was more familiar for you? I'm interested whether, because given what you've created and given the culture that you've created and the planet that you've sustained, what was it that kind of drew you to doing that as opposed to living on someone else's planet?
So in HR, you are a department within a company. And I was always really interested in business. I'd studied occupational psychology, which is a definite strand within a business.
Yeah.
And there was something about creating something where I had ownership of it, where I had an idea, I could formulate it, I was responsible for it, I was accountable for it. That was deeply appealing, and from a commercial perspective, the reward of that as well, as lending the flexibility of being able to be my own boss. With a like-minded business partner, for me was the ultimate goal.
So freedom,
100%.
influence, sense of independence.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the ability to create.
Yeah. So in a way, because I've found this over the years, does it feel like you're creating a piece of art with this thing? Are you kind of like, is it this thing and you're just thinking, oh, well, we could shape it like this, or I could kind of, paint that colour, or...
Yeah, I think I agree, and I can see how that does take its own form. It really does. And you, as a business leader, you are somebody who has a huge amount of influence in terms of how you curate it.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
And at times, you have to create stability so that the art looks the same, but with different people involved in the process, it takes different direction. And that, for me, has been a wonderful thing to see as a leader.
Yeah. Okay. So how people come in and they influence the culture.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I think that's, otherwise it's not a culture, it's a cult, right? If new people coming in and they have to conform, then it's not a culture, right? It's a cult of Aliya and Sue, right? Which is a slightly different thing.
Very different.
And that kind of sensitivity to what a culture is that something that you learned, or does it just feel innate in you, in that because of your heritage and the fact that you had to learn how to navigate your way through different sorts of environments that weren't necessarily entirely where you weren't kind of normal, if you like, where you were different. How much of that influenced the culture that you've created at work that says actually it should be something where everyone can find their place in it?
Such a good question. So yeah, I mean, from an upbringing perspective, being somebody who grew up in a very predominantly white city, you always have a sense of you're not the same as everybody else. And I definitely believe that my parents would constantly tell me that I wasn't the same as everyone else. And when you're a child, you just want to be like everybody else. But as I've matured, I think I've really enjoyed the space of not being like everybody else. There's a very unique position there. I think from a cultural perspective and building that into work, for me, I think the most important part of work is finding something that you enjoy and finding something where you can drive positive change. And for me, that's what led me into HR.
Right.
Now, in some organizations, in HR teams, that is not possible because of leadership and because of the culture that you might find yourself in. So I was really quite passionate about creating something where we could bring that to life.
Yeah, okay.
And we could find other people on the journey who were keen to join us in that space.
And I'm getting a very strong sense that you felt that the best way in which you could create that place was to create it rather than try and influence it in somebody else's world or planet.
Yeah. And my mother ran her own practice, so ultimately she ran her own business, right? So I saw her do it. I saw my father in a much larger system, but again, he had the privilege of making big decisions.
Yes.
And I loved that, and I was really drawn to that, and also I felt that was a skill that I could naturally kind of step into.
Yeah.
But in terms of Sue and I, when we first started, and just thinking about how you curate these events, I don't think there was any point at the very beginning where Sue and I had thought we would get to the place that we are today.
Yeah.
So we've been fortunate, but we've worked really hard to build something where I think the pair of us have always wanted to remain true to our core values that have connected us. So we're very clear about those values when we hire people, we're very clear about those values and kind of integrate them into the rituals of how we work together as a team and how we present ourselves to our clients, how we work with our suppliers, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's not little, in fact, that the core components that really connect Sue and I have been our kind of guiding light in terms of how we run the business. They've always been that sense check. Are we doing the right thing? Let's go back to how, what's really important to us.
So I find that fascinating because you talked also about this, your very acute awareness that what you're running was a business.
Yeah.
Right? That number on the bottom of the letterhead is a registered company, not a registered charity, right?
Yeah.
So it's a commercial enterprise.
Absolutely.
How much of the kind of culture, the rhythms, the rituals, how it needs to feel to be around here, the sort of experience that you want not just clients to have, but as importantly, the people that work in the business to have.
Yeah.
How important has that been in the commercial success of the organisation? I know it's a really hard thing to measure because you'd have to run your whole lives again without doing that bit and to figure it out.
Agreed.
But your instinct in terms of the commercial success of the business, to what extent has that been informed, supported by the climate, the ecosystem, the planet that you and Sue have created over so many years?
Yeah, I think both Sue and I over the past 12 years have seen a huge shift in people's expectations around work.
Yeah,
and we set the business up, I think, in the tail end of a recession. We have been through a pandemic. We have been through various situations of employment law where flexibility is becoming much more prevalent and acceptable, thank goodness. And as a business owner, I think for us, having engaged and motivated people who are energized by the work that they do creates a huge point of differentiation to other businesses out there. So from a commercial perspective, I think when people meet members of our team, it's quite clear that they can see that there's passion behind what we're doing.
Yeah.
And that passion comes from the overall vision, which is we're all aligned very clearly in wanting to make a difference. We want to help businesses create great places to work. It sounds a bit cheesy, but actually, in its pure simplicity, well,
the opposite sounds a lot less attractive.
It
right?
really does.
Yeah.
It really does. And the war on talent, the war to get good people into employment and to retain them is a huge business objective for many businesses.
Yeah, and I think that area that you're kind of moving into around the changing nature of the relationship that people now have with work.
Yeah.
It seems to me that is where that link between the culture and the commercial success happens. So when I started in work 300 years ago, engagement was something that happened to you before you got married. That wasn't a thing.
Okay.
Culture
That's
was
an
something
event.
you grew in a dish.
Yeah.
Right? It was just none of these things. You turned up and your job was kind of do your job and go home, and you got paid, and that was like the deal. And I think what I've noticed particularly over the last 5-10 years, and I think particularly with COVID, that people's relationship with work has, well, a couple of things have happened. I think people's relationship with work has changed fundamentally.
Agreed.
And I think that's probably in lots of ways a good thing. But I also think the contract the previous contract has been broken. So when I started in work, you kept your head down, you did a good job, you got some salary rises, you earned 15 or 20 grand a year, and you could buy a studio flat in London, and you save for your future and pension schemes and all that kind of stuff, all that kind of parts of the contract. And lots of those things are now gone for the generation coming into work now. And I think my experience, I'm interested to hear kind of your reflections on it, is that people coming into work now, really good people, are looking for something different because the old things aren't there. And one of the things that we can still offer is an environment where whoever you are, you can thrive. And if that's the case, then I think what I'm hearing is you attract better people.
Yeah.
They want to do great work because they're in a place where they can flourish, and that then delivers commercial success. Is that what you?
It's a simple formula.
Okay.
But it is one that requires planning.
Yes.
So if I can cast my mind back to Sue and I starting to think about our very first employee. So our very first employee who is still very much in our ecosystem and doing brilliantly well. Herself, she set up her own business, which is fantastic, and she is also a working mum now too, so hats off to her. She joined us as a graduate, and I remember interviewing her in canteen at wherever it is, down by Waterloo, which was our kind of sub-office space at that point. I think Sue and I used to dot around each table and drive the poor restaurant staff absolutely livid because we didn't have office space and we wanted to, keep overheads low. So we'd use cafes and restaurants as offices. So our first employee joined, and we thought that this lovely world of flexibility and not having an office would be amazing and would be a real draw. And it was for a certain amount of time until feedback was given that actually I don't want to work in a cafe. I'd like to have a desk. I'd like to have an office, which Sue and I kind of recoiled in horror. Oh my God, they want an office. What do we do?
So annoying.
I know. So, we had stepped away from ever thinking that we would need an office because we were loving the flexibility, keeping the overheads light, but totally recognised and took on board the feedback. And so we took the step to get some space in a private members club. So we did a bit of research, and we had a few more employees. Everybody had membership. Private members club, which was a beautiful place to work, very central.
I think I met you both.
That's indeed, you absolutely did. So overrated coffees, very expensive, service wasn't great, but a beautiful place to work. So we had membership there, and about 2 years in, we had feedback that also was not a great place to work. So Sue and I, again, as business owners, were like, my goodness me, we don't understand. And then you understand the feedback. As an HR team, you need a printer, you need to have a plug point to be able to charge your laptop, etc., etc. I know, such high demands. Yeah. So we then moved to WeWork, which was a big step for us because we'd never thought that Sue and I never felt like we needed to be in these spaces. But our team clearly did. So, years later, we have an office space. And for us, actually, that journey for me as a leader, thinking about, oh my God, I never want to work in an office again, was really fundamental for our talent. So for me, as a leader, and there is a point to this, I think evolving has only been possible by making sure that the system allows for feedback to be received and shared both ways. Yeah, I've seen systems that have not been as successful where feedback hasn't been up and down process. So yeah, I would say the evolution of it has been created by making sure that we create those open channels.
And that's part of that culture versus cult thing, right? So it's something that grows and develops. And what's the kind of balance for you in terms of you and Sue having the vision of where it should go, and then some people come along and go, oh, by the way, this vision of us working in a private members club, it's kind of like, that's not really happening for us.
Yeah.
How much of it over the years has the blend changed between it being yours and Sue's vision of where we should be and where we should go, and other members of your team come back, and has it changed, and is yours and Sue's role still absolutely key in terms of keeping the ecosystem in place? Has that, I think what I'm asking is, has the burden lightened at all over the years, or has it just become different?
That's such a good question. I think as the years have progressed, one thing that has been really helpful to enable us to build a successful culture and business has been to have very clear roles. And those clear roles have been defined on each of our strengths. And as our system has grown bigger and bigger, and we've invited people to obviously continually share feedback with us, we've created positions where people can develop and grow. We have amazing talent in our team who are able to question things. We're constantly asking them, make it better, look at it with a critical eye. What we've created might not be the end product. So just we're encouraging that culture, and we've hired new talent into our business at a senior level most recently and given them space to do it. I feel like the opportunity for people to ameliorate, that's a word, isn't it?
It is definitely. I think it's a word.
It feels like a great word that I'm going to just use right now. Let's do that. We can edit it if it's rubbish. It has really helped bring the system on. Because you can sometimes, as a business, operate in an echo chamber. If you have just Sue and I going, blah, 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 this is what we're doing, this is where we need to go. I think the vision has remained the same. We haven't deviated from that. But in terms of all the various different products that have been created, have come out of people's feedback around spotting opportunities, etc. And what I want to encourage as we move into the next chapter with more senior people in the team and the team growing is an opportunity for people to build on that and to take it to different places.
How worried are you about it being diluted as you grow and you've got new people coming in with their own experiences, perhaps their own expectations, and this essence of what you and Sue had in mind? How much of, I get two-part question here. So how concerned are you that it might be diluted, and how hard do you and Sue still have to work to make sure that everyone's got air to breathe, but the oxygen they're breathing is yours and Sue's?
It's a great one. So I would say we still work super hard. I don't think that will stop, because ultimately as business owners, our team see us as leaders.
And when you just to be clear, when you say you're working really hard, I know that you work really hard, and it's working really hard on the culture, on the ecosystem.
100%.
Okay.
We have to keep our eye on that. For us, our team are really, really important. Making sure that they have the right skills, they're enabled, they're excited, they have opportunities, there's room for them to grow and develop is super, super important. So over the past couple of years, as we had quite a surge in terms of growth from kind of, we operated with the kind of 8 to 12 people model for several years. And just after COVID, all of a sudden we had a massive surge from a commercial perspective, which then required more headcount. We moved from that kind of 12 to suddenly we were 20.
Okay.
So a very different system. So we had quite a lot of work to do to get us up into a system where that 8 to 12 model was definitely not fit for purpose for this new space. So for us to enable the team, having strong managers were really important to manage people who were starting their career at JourneyHR. So that was a huge piece of investment they've been working really hard on for the last couple of years. Everybody with clear roles and responsibilities, the creation of a senior management team with clear responsibilities of what they do, a creation of a leadership team with clear responsibilities of what they do and who's accountable for what, has been really important over the last couple of years. So in terms of where Sue and I sit, we have spent a lot of time developing and investing and making sure that everybody on the journey has had seat belts, the appropriate car seats, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's been a real kind of hygiene setting. Now, as we move into the next chapter, it is with fresh talent at a senior level. What we're really enjoying, having had people from an external with external experience, is the value that they bring and the insights that they bring and the leadership that they bring. But we've been really careful about how we hire and who we hire.
And let's talk about these new senior people.
Yeah.
How do they get to know kind of the rules of the game on the planet?
Yeah.
Because, you know, if they went to work for an equivalent business that wasn't yours, it would look and feel very different. And I'm assuming that as senior leaders, they're also either now or at some point going to have to be standard bearers for the culture, for the planet.
Absolutely.
How do they? Is it kind of? It just happens because they hear you and Sue and they see you lead and they see you work with clients, or is there anything that you've done that's more kind of overt in terms of, actually, if you're going to be a citizen of this planet, this is the shit you need to know, this is how this stuff works? How much of it is kind of explicit as opposed to, you know, just over a period of time gets into your DNA because you hang around us enough?
Yeah, I mean, as HR consultants, what we have learned during the progression of our businesses is that our HR systems need to be on point and absolutely sparkling with a strong sense of best practice within our team. So we've spent a lot of time making sure that our onboarding documentation and process is fabulous. We've also been fortunate to grow senior talent in our business. So we have an ecosystem of actually people who have, so one team member who joined us as an HR consultant and has developed to be an HR director has been with us for 9 years. So the longevity of that experience is tremendously valuable in terms of how new people can onboard and understand that system. So her knowledge has been exceptional. We also have somebody who's been with us for, I think, just over 3 years, who has also had quite a transformative experience of joining us as an HR consultant, and now she's head of HR. So we've had people who have helped us, and also they have obviously grown. We use psychometrics a lot in terms of understanding each other. So that self-awareness piece and how we all connect with each other is really useful information for all of us to be understanding and be aware of. We also have very clear job descriptions, very clear levels of accountability, who is responsible for what. So we're very clear about our roles. We have clear denominations around who works on different accounts and where they start and where they finish. We also have role model behaviours. So we have a competency framework around behaviours that are really important that link back to our values. So we assess people when we interview them. They're given feedback from a 360 perspective. So they have the opportunity to constantly remind themselves of what they're being measured against, because it's not just what they do, it's how they do it.
That's just
that's so important.
And that's fascinating, because I'm fascinated and surprised.
Oh,
because I am, because actually what you've done, it seems to me, is you've done a lot of work in almost kind of, in my language, codifying your culture through the tools and through the frameworks, and linking back very specifically through kind of goal clarity and role clarity and real classic high performance stuff, but not and the behavioral frameworks. All of that is quite structured stuff. So I think the answer to my question is, actually, it's not some sort of vague process of osmosis. Actually, you've structured it so that there is there's processes, guidance, there's tools that let you know, actually, not just from so I get it from a client delivery point of view in terms of consistency and professional standards and kind of, particularly in the business that you're in, you'd expect those things, the HR things to be pretty on point. It'd be worrying if they weren't. But it's the cultural stuff that you've also seems to have actually done quite a lot of work in that taking that same approach to it.
Yeah, and I think one of the big draws for people who join our business are the people that they work with.
Yeah, sure.
Because we work with lots of teams, lots of different businesses, and sometimes there are dysfunctionalities within the team. There might be certain personalities who might not necessarily work as collaboratively or effectively with others. And Sue and I have always wanted to create a space where we hire diverse talent.
Yes. Yeah.
But there is a sense of unity within that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's that bit about it's the JourneyHR oxygen that gets breathed. You're different, and we celebrate your difference, and we love you, and we want you here because of the difference that you bring.
Yeah.
But what binds us together is the culture, and it seems to me you've done quite a lot of work in codifying.
Yeah.
That culture. What happens when you get it wrong? What happens when somebody comes into the business? So I guess another two-part question. What's actually the impact when you get it wrong? Because we all do, right?
And
you get somebody in and you think they're the best fit in the world, and you think they're going to thrive in this culture and they're going to add to it, and they're adding to it, but not in a way that feels very good. So how does that impact, and what have you learned about how you deal with that?
It's a brilliant question. So from the experience that I've had, and obviously being an HR person, you always give this advice to paying customers who find themselves in these territories too. So we've had to put our money where our mouth is. So for us, because our culture is so important, and because our team is so important, and because we're quite close to our team still, which I believe is the right thing to do. We're a team of 26 people now. We've always been close to our team. So making time for those one-to-ones, making time for the check-ins, making time to make sure that we're understanding how people are doing, both kind of on the job, but also kind of everything's okay in their other systems as well, without interfering too much. But creating the space for people to be able to talk about that and for us to be able to support them is huge. And is a huge part of how Sue and I would like to operate and will continue operating. So,
because that's part of the reason you set up the business, so that it could support and be informed by your life outside of work.
Absolutely.
Right? And what you seem to have done as leaders is to make sure that that's still the same for... Okay.
And you know what we've learned as leaders is you can't make everybody happy.
No.
But when it comes to somebody joining the team or perhaps making mistakes from a hiring perspective, where people's behaviour might not be 100% on point, where people's capability might not be 100% on point, our first kind of step is, right, first of all, let them know and give them feedback and give them opportunities and guidance as to how they can step into a different space. So give them clarity as to what your expectations are. I think the failure to do that can create monsters.
And there isn't a conflict between candor and kindness, right? So you can be candid, it sounds like, but so you're being really straightforward. You're having what people might call difficult conversations.
Correct.
I think you and I would see them much more as important conversations. But you're doing it with a spirit that is, well, actually, we want you to thrive here.
Absolutely. So we would always give somebody the opportunity and clarity as to these are our expectations. If you're not meeting them, these are the reasons why. Here's the evidence. We do it in a timely way, so there'd be no surprise.
Okay.
And an opportunity for a conversation. Because I think what life has taught me is that nothing is clear-cut. I might have a perspective of something, but I don't really truly know what is going on in somebody else's life.
So you have to meet them where they are.
Absolutely. And create a fair space for them to come and have a conversation, to either share their self-awareness of the situation or explain what is impacting them to be in the space that they're in.
And when someone's kind of not getting it, what sort of impact does that have
It's really hard.
on the rest of the team?
It's really, really hard. So the team are very supportive. We've been incredibly fortunate to create a team where they all enjoy and this has been a real, for me, a moment of success, and I think for Sue as well, where they've created systems where they spend time together without Sue and I having to be there.
Yeah.
They enjoy each other's company. So when we have found people who haven't necessarily fitted into that system, and it's not from a cliquey perspective, it's more from a capability perspective or
Yes.
a behavioural perspective.
Yes.
It's really clear.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
really obvious.
Right. Yeah.
But we do spend time trying to resolve it before we take action.
Yeah. And sometimes that action can be, this may not be the place for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody. I think
No.
people, HR professionals tend to think of HR consultancy as being quite sexy and
Yeah.
being like, wow, I really want to do this. And it's hard work.
Yeah.
There's a lot of balancing. There's a lot of account management and client servicing to think about. There's a lot of kind of commercial decision making.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's fast paced, so it's not for everybody. And I totally get that. And I think
And you're unapologetic for that.
yeah,
Right? Yeah.
I enjoy it. I
Yeah.
love that variety,
Yeah.
but it's not for everybody.
Yeah. So the impact is significant. You're giving people enough chance to be able to say, look, these are the areas where we might need to change some stuff here.
Absolutely.
But in the end, it sounds as though you won't shy away from the really hard decision
Yeah,
in interests of maintaining the ecosystem on your planet.
absolutely. Well, yeah, I think for any culture to be successful, we all know that trust is so important. And for me to be a leader where people have that sense of trust, I have to have some integrity. I have to be able to do the right thing. And that is being honest. I think honesty has been a huge value that both Sue and I share. Doing the right thing by our people has been a huge commitment for both of us. And we take it really seriously because, sadly, the performance of one person impacts the system.
It
And that
does.
can be incredibly
Absolutely.
positive at times, but that can also be really hard. But making sure that people have a fair chance in our system to succeed has been something that's been a massive driver for both Sue and I.
Yeah. Really, really interesting.
Yeah, because life throws punches. Life throws punches
At us
all
all,
the time,
right?
right?
At everybody.
Yeah, we've seen, a huge increase in people feeling more comfortable to disclose mental health issues. We've seen a huge increase of people being diagnosed with neurodiversity. And, there's a lot of stuff going on at the moment. People trying to make sense of the world after everything that's happened and continuing to be under a huge amount of pressure with either finances, with well-being. There's a lot of stuff going on.
And it feels as though it's really important to you and Sue that your planet is one where whoever you are, if you're committed to some important things, particularly around behaviours, attitudes, breathing life into our culture, then you'll do everything you can.
100%.
What can you ever see circumstances where some or all of your culture will be up for sale? Is there an iconic customer, a star player who might, it might not feel absolutely right in terms of your culture, but actually you think about the commercial lens and you think about practicalities and what you talked before about putting your money where your mouth is. How much of anything are you prepared to compromise on for your culture?
Good question. So, being a people-driven business, this stuff's really important. And we have worked with businesses where the values haven't been the same. And we have learned to take difficult commercial decisions and say thank you very much, but not for us.
Yeah.
And I think we continue to be brave and do that. I think Sue and I chose to run businesses so we could work with like-minded people. And thank goodness for diversity. There's a huge range of people out there that are wonderful to work with, and some that are just not going to be for us.
You find your tribe, right?
Yeah,
and you find your tribe not just internally, but with your customers as well.
Yeah.
And presumably finding your tribe internally and externally is also really important for maintaining the ecosystem.
And trust in leadership. So we're very open with our team to say, if this client, if this business is not moving in a direction that you feel comfortable with, always tell us. We'd rather have the difficult conversation with that business to say, I'm really sorry, but I just don't think we're matched. I think our vision is this way, yours is perhaps that way. We've had conversations where we have made commercial decisions to just hold on to integrity, which again, that value that Sue and I share, we don't just have it plastered on a wall. We don't have anything plastered on the walls, but we don't have it weaved into our system. We don't reference it without standing next to it and being really proud that we live it.
And that whole kind of piece around the values and bringing them to life and people standing in that. So the business has been going now for 12 years.
Yeah.
At some point, in the far, far, far distant future, you and Sue may decide, I guess, that you don't want to work as hard or as long as you currently are.
Yeah.
Is your hope that the planet and the culture that you've created will continue beyond you? And if so, is there anything else that you think you need to be doing to make that happen? Or are you reconciled to the fact that when you and Sue have kind of, taken, slowed the pace down a little bit, or not quite as intense, that the culture you've created, the planet you've created, may just change a little and not be quite what it is right now?
That's a good question. I think over the past few years, for me personally, having grown the business, having hired new people, having seen the value that they bring, it's a really good question. The reason why I'm pausing is I'm just thinking about the importance of the culture that we have in the business. How precious am I? I wouldn't want it to stay the same. I would always want it to be better. So in a dream situation, to create it for me and Sue, I think that the purpose of us doing this is to create something that's sustainable. Where
beyond you two.
It doesn't have to be us.
Yes.
I mean, we're just Aliya and Sue at the end of the day. Who were two women who have set up a business without any real formal training, who have grown this with strong principles, right? With strong principles, with a clear vision from a commercial perspective about what we want to do and how we can deliver it. It would be a real shame if it just continued to stay on this path. I think I've always been welcome and would always encourage other voices to be in that mix. And right now, I think from a senior perspective, we have even more opportunity to really lift those voices, and for it to be broader than just Aliya and Sue. And I'm excited about that chapter.
Well, what are the non-negotiables beyond Aliya and Sue? People have different voices and they'll bring different things, and that's what makes it a culture and not a cult. But what are the non-negotiables in that? With all of that difference, that you might look on from afar at some point and say, that's exactly a JourneyHR thing to do, or a way to be, or that's not. What are the things that you would just say, no, those are non-negotiable. You cannot be part of a citizen of this planet and do this or this, or be that way. What are those?
So the non-negotiables would probably be, if I look at it from a positive perspective, the values that I think our values would need to stay true. So a big piece of what we're delivering would be to add value, to be about relationship building, to be about the connections. to have a system where there's a huge amount of trust and commitment and accountability.
Mm-hmm.
I think when people start losing a lot of that stuff, then you end up in a sticky place. I think being able to have a business that's still doing the right thing and having a really beautiful balance of doing the right thing for the team as well as for clients is really important. And there to be some honesty and transparency between that is really important for me too. Sue and I have created a system where we regularly update our team every quarter with this is how the business is doing, this is how much, this is how much revenue we've generated, this is where we need to go. That sense of commitment where everybody feels like they have a connection is really important. That connection's lost. That, for me, any kind of behavior that breaks that, non-negotiable.
Right. And that's part of your legacy, right?
I want people to feel proud. When every induction that I do with every team member, I want JourneyHR to be the best place they've ever worked.
And presumably you want to feel proud as well, right?
Absolutely. I want to feel proud of...
You and Sue birthed this thing.
We did.
You birthed it.
We really did.
Yeah.
And it's been, I think the pair of us are very open and acknowledge that we couldn't have done it without each other. I'm very, very fortunate to have had such a strong business partner in Sue. With difficult situations, we've been able to look at things through different lenses, to be able to talk things through and to be able to come always to an agreed solution. We're always on the same page. We may have different ways of doing it, but the outcome is always the same. And
I guess part of the challenge going forward, thinking many, many years ahead, is how do you infuse that into the ecosystem of the planet so that it's increasingly less dependent, if that makes sense, on you and Sue.
And psychometrics play a huge part in that in terms of making sure that we have a really diverse set of people with different preferences in the way that they work. Because that has been how Sue and I have acutely respected each other's differences.
But that's part of the essence of your planet, right? Is that difference and how you've managed not just to tolerate, recognise, flex around each other, but actually create something because of that difference. And so that seems to be part of the DNA of your ecosystem. To mix more metaphors.
I think doing the right thing, doing brilliant pieces of work, adding value and always forward thinking, those are the kind of...
those are like the non-negotiables. Right. Okay.
And it's about relationships. Sue and I have built a business based on relationships. We've done this from scratch. We've done it from scratch.
You've built a planet.
Which is just bonkers when you think about it. But we've done it and we're doing it. And we're doing it really well. And to build a business through referrals and word of mouth and to be in the space that we're in and hold that privilege is phenomenal. And I really, count my lucky stars that we have got to this space. And a lot of people go, oh, it's nothing to do with luck. And I get that. And maybe there's an imposter syndrome that sometimes still creeps in a little bit as a leader. How did I get here? Should I be here? Would anyone else employ me to do this job? Possibly not. And quite frankly, sometimes I actually think I don't want, I made a decision to do this because I think sometimes you need to be unemployable to be a leader. You want to do this because... No,
absolutely.
You want to do it your way.
Most of the leaders I work with, and some would include me in this, are completely unemployable. But that's perfectly fine because we didn't set out to be employable. We set out to be something else. So a couple more, maybe three more questions before we finish. You talked before about the growth of the business. When you think about maintaining, sustaining, developing, nurturing your planet, does size matter? Is there a size beyond which you think this shit's going to get really hard?
I mean, my goodness me, when we first set this business up, just hiring one person was kind of like, oh my goodness me. To be in a position now where we are, the size feels manageable from a cultural perspective. I think we've hit that magic number. We had a wonderful space, kind of the 8 to 12 was wonderful. And I don't think we could be as successful as we are had we not created levels and systems and process and support. But I've always said, I don't think we need any more people. But the success of the business has always required more people. So right now we're in a comfortable space. I think things would have to change quite dramatically for us to grow any larger. I don't think I'd necessarily. I don't plan it. But then I said, if you'd asked me this question 5 years ago, I'd be in the same space. Let's see where it goes. I don't want to rule out any possibilities. But I would never want to take my eye off the culture. Never, ever.
No, I think, you and I both work with leaders who work in really large organisations. And I think maintaining their planet is so much harder, because I think there is just some stuff at scale that you have to do that means you probably necessarily need to compromise on some of the more human stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was just interested in your thoughts, whether there was a ceiling that you had in mind. You thought, if we get to 50 people, I can't, or 70 people, I can't see it.
I agree. I wouldn't want to be any more than 50, but don't hold me to that. Who knows what's going to happen?
Sure.
Who knows what's going to happen?
No, well, you might lead the way, and you can let us know how to do that. My second to last question for you is, when we started this conversation about your heritage and how much of that has informed the nature of the place that you want to be. When you think about all your ancestors that are still with us and some are not with us anymore, how proud would they be of what you've created?
I hope they would be proud. My family who are still with me tell me that they are proud.
That's
but I'm from my perspective, I'm incredibly fortunate. I come from an incredible family, a family who have been very driven, who are incredibly successful, each one in their own right. So I have siblings who are partners in law firms, one under 40 who is a working mum of two, which I think is just insane and wonderful and good for her. Everybody has done well, but it has been driven through that real thread of work hard. Work hard. And my ancestors in Kashmir had a very privileged life. I had some who were naturally very wealthy, and some who were very focused on education and built their wealth through that sense. So I feel like I've come from a family who have been trailblazers, who've wanted to make an impact.
And you're continuing that legacy.
And you've got the sort of system behind you that presents, and you don't often recognise that it's behind you and around you.
And I love the fact that you talked about work hard, which kind of leads to my last question. And I wonder whether work hard would be one of these. If you were going to give 2, 3, or 4 pieces of advice to somebody who was thinking about establishing their own planet, and what would those be for anyone who wanted to say, it's not just what we do, but it's how we do it. I'm assuming one of those will be work hard.
I think it's about be clear about what you want.
Okay, so be intentional.
Have a real sense of purpose. Why are you doing it? What do you want to get out of it?
Be limited to or beyond financial success.
Beyond financial. Just think about the big picture. Why are you doing this? What is the purpose of this? Be really honest about that question. It might change as time goes on.
It might unfold, right?
It might unfold, and be really comfortable with that. But start with clear intentions, because if you want anybody to follow you as a leader, you have to be really clear about where the hell you're going and why. People see through this. People are much more questioning than they've ever been, and I think that's a good thing. It holds us to account.
Totally.
So be honest about why you're doing it and what you want to get out of it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that
So
would be one.
Work hard, be intentional.
Yeah. Be brave.
That's so important, isn't
Sometimes you've got to make. Sometimes it's not easy. You've got to be brave.
it? Yeah.
You can't sit back and expect the world to come to you.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the work hard bit playing in a little bit, but there's that bravery of, you've
I
got
think
to make
bravery is different.
just difficult decisions.
Yeah.
You've got to be confident
Mm-hmm.
about the proposition that you're standing for. So be brave. You're not going to be everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah, and you're not setting out to be everyone's cup of tea, right?
Yeah.
But knowing and accepting that is such an important step, isn't it?
Yeah. I think be brave, work hard, and be honest about what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
That's been great. I've really enjoyed that.
Super. Thank you.